Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Sidereal astrology, true sidereal astrology community. Great to see everyone joining here this lovely Sunday. Gonna go through the chat here and just say hello to everyone who's in the chat, and then we can start with some look at the year ahead. Well, not year. Actually, you know what? Maybe we do that. We haven't actually done the year ahead. So maybe we do the year ahead, actually. I meant to say week ahead, but why not? Let's take a look at the year and see what's going on there. And if someone could let me know, how do I sound? How do I look? Is the video and audio good? Let me know here down in the chat. All right, going through here. So we have Nina. Great to see you, Nina. Nina says, hi, I'd love to know what are the good signs in a birth chart for a potential romantic partnership? Also, can we still suggest guests for the upcoming live streams? Yeah, absolutely. Suggest some guests. Gabriella will check them, and if they are compatible with our channel, similar in the sense that it's about personal growth and development, and they have similar following size, I'm more than happy to invite them on, and we'll see if they accept. But yeah, if you do have someone, please let me know. But to answer your question here about the good signs for a potential romantic partner, what I find the most valuable is having what you might call glue in the charts, in the two charts. Glue would be the simplest way. There's a lot of different ways to find glue, things that hold the charts together, things that hold the relationship together. So the easiest ones to find are the conjunctions. So finding out what their sun, moon, and Venus, these would be the most important from a planetary standpoint, from a what we call synastry or compatibility standpoint, is the sun, moon, and Venus. So finding out what those signs are and seeing if they're either in the same sign or in the opposite sign. Okay, this is usually very good. And in fact, I actually prefer the opposite sign because that actually has more of that glue, a little bit of tension, which is needed in relationships, growth and things like this, but also that attraction from someone who's, quite different. The opposition is kind of like that two opposites attract kind of a thing, or the two opposite polarities of a magnet, and so it becomes quite strong there. So for example, if say someone's Venus is in Pisces, then if the other person's sun, moon, or Venus is in Virgo, then great. That would be a very strong glue. Or if it's in Pisces too, that's great too. The conjunctions are more like a similar personality, right? So if that person has Pisces and you have Pisces, regardless of the planet, sun, moon, or Venus, that can be a very strong glue there. So after that, there's more technical things you can do by running a synastry chart. You would check to see if there's any planets in the 1st or 7th houses. That's also a strong glue. And also the north and south nodes, actually. A very strong synastry. In fact, you don't even need the software for this. But if you can find out what houses, particularly, most importantly, the houses, okay? So using the chart calculator. So if you go to masteringthezodiac.com and go to the chart calculator, if you have swapped nodes, so basically opposite north nodes, so we talked about opposition being so strong for glue. If the nodes are opposite, so let's say the north node's in Pisces in one chart and the north node's in Virgo in the other chart, but more specifically the houses. So if the north node's in, say, the 12th house in one chart, and in the north node it's in the 6th house in the other chart, so 12 and 6 are opposite in astrology. This is extremely good. In fact, I would say that's probably in all my experience, that's the number one, in my opinion, giveaway in terms of a relationship that has a strong glue, a strong future. I'm not saying it's the only thing. Just because it's not there does not mean you can't have a good relationship. But if you do see it in a relationship, that can be extremely good. So if you're going to look at one thing, look at the north and south nodes, see if they're opposite in terms of particularly the house. And then second to that, the sun, moon, or Venus placements. I talked about it in terms of sign because that's kind of like an everyday way of doing it. We kind of know each other's signs, but the houses are, of course, more important. So when it comes to those 3, sun, moon, and Venus, take a look at the houses. And if they're in opposite houses, that's really good. But if they're in the same houses, that can be really good as well. So that's just a little bit of what we call synastry there. Obviously, there's more to it, but I think that's an 80-20 rule. That's like 20% of the synastry that can give you 80% of what you're wanting to see in a relationship. But great question, Nina. Thanks for asking that. Holly, great to see you. Hello, Athen. Hello, Visible Sky Friends. Oh, I like that. Visible Sky Friends. That's a good one. Jens, great to see you. Greetings from cold Copenhagen. All right. Nice to see you. Got a little bit of winter there. Karma Kerfuffle. Hi, Athen and sidereal friends. Question. I just found out about decans in astrology. Do you work with them? I personally don't, but it's not because I don't find them accurate. The main reason I don't is because since we're using the actual size of the constellations, the decans will also vary in size. So for those that don't know, so decan is basically you're going to divide up. Traditionally, decans is dividing up a sign by 3 parts. Okay, and so in traditional astrology, you have 30 degrees for each of the signs. And so each sign is given 10 degrees of a decan. So the first, say, 0 to 10 degrees of Virgo means something different than, say, the 10 to 20 degrees of Virgo or the 20 to 30 degrees of Virgo. So they divide up the signs into 3 usually equal parts. But because we're using the actual size of the constellations in our system, the Virgo decans, for example, would be very large. And the Cancer, for example, decans would be very small. So I don't have a whole lot of experience in actually practicing to see if it works. And I'm sure it does. And there's a very simple way you can use decans with true sidereal, which is to think of the first decan of every sign being more similar to the previous sign. So for example, if you divide up Virgo into 3 parts, the first decan, I don't know how many degrees that would be, but more than 10, Virgo would be more like Leo. The middle decan would be the strongest Virgo qualities, double Virgo, whatever. And then the last decan would be more like Libra, the sign after Virgo. And that can give you, I think, a good way of working with the true sidereal decans in a way that you're able to see the sky more fluid, that you're kind of transitioning from one sign to the next. Especially with true sidereal, we're not getting to some like even 30 degrees thing where it's like as soon as you're 0.001 degrees in the new sign, all of a sudden you're this new sign. That does work with mainstream because it's all this very structured 30 degree system. But with true sidereal, with the visible sky, there's no lines that run right in between the constellations. And so there's no like hard and fast rule that as soon as you get to this degree, you're like in this sign. So everything is very spectral, very much like a spectrum or a barometer when we're dealing with true sidereal, in that you're slowly transitioning from one sign to the next. And decans can be a great way of working with that, because, as you're going from one sign to the next, you're going to slowly transition instead of it being all of a sudden. So decans will give you that more kind of slow transition interpretation from one sign to the other. All right, so Infinite, great to see you. Hi, my question is, how is the energy treating you? How have you been flowing with the times? Oh, thanks, Infinite. So me personally, let's see. Been working quite a bit, but also taking a lot of time out. The full moon has really sparked a lot of interest from me. So looks like I'm going to be taking a ski trip here in a few weeks, which is going to be great to go do some snowboarding, which is something that I haven't done since I was basically in my early 20s. And so getting back into some old hobbies and interests, playing golf a little bit more. So for me, it's like very much a lot of work, but also a lot of like playtime in between. So I would say for me, especially with that full moon, because Leo is, about self-expression, I would say, and hobbies and interests and all this kind of thing, I would say it's definitely shown me lately that, I can have more fun in my life the next 6 months, incorporate a little more play, more interests, more creative energy, and things of this nature. Yeah, so that's me there. And also, I'm to be quite honest, I'm looking forward to this Mars going direct. So we have Mars going direct here on Sunday, and it's not that all of a sudden things will start to move forward with the Mars stuff. But I've been particularly challenged with the Mars retrograde in the sense that it just feels like my energy's not as strong. I'm feeling kind of like easily irritated with things. My Mars is at the very top of the chart, so it's a very strong planet in my chart. So if anything happens to Mars, I feel it very personally. And Mars retrogrades have always been very difficult for me. So I'm looking forward to the Mars direct, just to kind of move some of that fiery, direct, assertive, proactive energy forward a little bit. That's been a little bit frustrating for me lately. So that's more on the challenging side, but hopefully things will shift there for me towards the, probably early next week once Mars starts to build some momentum. But thanks for asking, Infinite. Dance Each Movement, great to see you. Aloha. Jens, great to see you as well. Hey, Infinite. Good question. Yep, great question. Thank you. Holly, it is windy, snowing, and minus 10 degrees Celsius, but feels like minus 19. Wow, that's cold. Here in Sudbury, Ontario area. Wow. So yeah, I would say enjoy it, but I think that's starting to get to the point of probably wanting to stay indoors, but maybe enjoy that. Maybe have that nice fire and whatnot. It's nice to cozy up. I'm over in Spain, so that's why I'm wanting some of that winter. So in a way, I'm jealous, but I will be honest, I'm not jealous for the negative 19, but I am jealous that you do have some of that wintry energy, and hope you can enjoy it for those of us who don't get to experience the snow or that cold weather very often, such as myself. Chris, great to see you. What do you know about a Fucus North Node in the 4th house for someone who doesn't want to bring up a family? Right, so I will say this for all North Nodes in the 4th house. For those of you out there, this will apply to 1/12 of you out there who have your North Node in the 4th. It's one of the most difficult placements because you're coming from a past life where you're so used to achieving and accomplishing, because remember the South Node is like our past life and our roots. And so, you're so used to being, career, achievement, productive, maybe even public. That's quite a contrast to then start to put more energy into personal life, right? So in your question for someone who doesn't want to bring up a family, it doesn't mean that you have to do it like as a family. It doesn't have to be a family itself. But it is good to obviously challenge yourself to grow more in the area of the personal life. So it doesn't mean like has to be biological family or literal family, but if you can connect with like family-like relationships, develop more personal connections, really fundamentally connect more with your feelings, your roots, your past, your emotions, and all this kind of a thing. This is really what the life path wants you to do. And I'm not sure your age, but a lot of it does tend to go with age, where usually the North Node doesn't become quite strong until our early to mid 30s. So depending on how old you are, when we get to our early to mid 30s, we then get really pushed into that North Node quite strongly. So that's where maybe our careers will take on more personal or intrinsic sort of energies, or, we start to then desire and actually want, and it excites us to have a little bit more of that personal life. So depending on where you're at with that, but I would say it doesn't have to be family, and that's for everyone's North Node. It doesn't have to be like one particular way of doing it. It's really however you want to paint that picture of your life, the personal life. And, this can mean personal relationships. It can mean just more security for yourself and others, accessing more of your caring, nurturing, and protective side, even outside of family, and maybe more of that energy in your career as well. Can be great. Alrighty, so going through the chat here, higher self-development. Thanks for joining us. Aquarius Sky Clock, always great to have you. Thanks for joining. Carolyn, great to see you. Sophia from Denmark, great to have you. Debbie's Witchy Vlog, great for joining. I'm glad that you just found sidereal, a true sidereal. Thanks for joining us. So Xena Warrior, great to have you. Xena says, the day before the full moon was real intense for me. Not sure why, but I am a Leo sun. Yeah, that could have a big part of it. 6 months ago was your birthday. And so the halfway point of your solar cycle. But I'll say this, it was probably difficult because it's been squaring Uranus. So the full moon square Uranus. Uranus is a very erratic energy, very out of left field, and for all of us really before the full moon last week, I had a very kind of chaotic or miscommunications and just kind of a lot of like busy energy leading up to it because of that square, because it was squaring Mercury as well. So this is the erratic nature. If you felt it that way, Uranus is the more erratic nature. Sometimes it's wanting to break through, break free, but there's definitely that challenge from that side of it. But particularly it would be for you because that means that the Uranus is squaring not only the full moon, but also your natal sun. So you're really getting that T-square with the full moon, really activating your natal chart there. But that's a great question in a way that we can all relate to with our personal charts is like, when we have these full moons, if they're activating our personal chart, like if it's opposite your sun, like in this case, because the full moon was conjunct your sun, but the transiting sun is opposite your sun. So it's marking the halfway point of that solar cycle can be very important. The Hippie Sage, great for joining. Lots of snow there as well. So Holly's in the kitchen and baking homemade bread today. That's great. Cooking and baking is a passion. That's great. It sounds warm. That sounds lovely. Atmosphere, great for you to join us. So grateful for you, says Atmosphere. I'm so happy you've shared the sidereal system with the world as I connect with this more than anything else. Oh, very happy to hear that, Atmosphere. Thank you for saying that. Happy you found true sidereal and the community. And again, thanks for joining us today. Christine, great to see you. Grand day, says Christine, to Athen and everyone. So Chris, going a little more on that North Node, I have this familial bond with my friend circle. That's great. Definitely feeling the nurturing side, but it's my way in my early 30s. Yeah, so it sounds like you're in your early 30s, so things will start to shift more into your North Node, very likely there, Chris. Amethyst, thanks for joining. Happy to catch this week. Catch the live this week. Karma Kerfuffle would love some insight on the year ahead. All right, so let's do it. Let's do the year ahead. So I didn't come prepared, so give me just a minute here, and I will cast the transit graph for the year ahead, which is probably the best way of going about this. All right, so we're looking at 2025. So there's no major squares or any like major outer planet configurations to mention for 2025. Generally, the way I'm reading 2025 is actually as a continuation of the seeds that were planted in 2024. So 2024, we had a lot of sign changes, right? We had Uranus going into Taurus. Most importantly, we had Pluto going into Capricorn, and of course Jupiter entering Taurus, but Jupiter changes a lot. Now this year, because of those outer planets particularly changing sign, those mark new beginnings and new areas of development. So a lot of what we'll be experiencing, I think, this year is in many ways just slowly, because they're outer planets, slowly moving forward the seeds that were planted in 2024. Now we do have sign changes this year, both with the North Node and the South Node. Saturn's first actually. Saturn's changing sign just at the end of this month in February. We'll start with that. But Saturn, Jupiter, and the nodes. Okay, Jupiter changes sign every year, so that's nothing new, but it's of course worth mentioning. So we're looking at the outer wheel here. This is the one that's being animated as I drag here for those that want to follow along. But as you can see here, Saturn is starting to enter into Pisces at the end of this month. There's no, again, exact line in which that exactly happens, but when we get to the 20s of February, late February into early March, we'll likely notice this transition. So this means a lot. This means that Saturn has finished Aquarius. The last 2 years has been really good for building things in our life that speak more to our individuality, more to our true self, more to our excitement. This is what Aquarius has been about. Aquarius is the constellation of accessing more of our individual spark and starting to contribute to things or communities or the world in a way that feels like it's greater than ourselves. So we want to contribute to things that are greater than ourselves. And this has also been good to get into things like technology and innovative stuff. And of course, we've seen that collectively with things like AI and all these technologies coming out from these past couple of years specifically. Okay, but personally, again, those foundations still kind of wrapping up. A continuation. We would say a continuation this year of those foundations, certainly around building a life around excitement, around contribution. These two things. Now, Saturn going into Pisces is more difficult for Saturn because Pisces is the dissolving of things, right? Pisces is the oceans of life, and Saturn is that planet of what we build and of our structures. So we have this planet of structures going into the void, going into the oceans, going into the unseen, the unknown, and also the spiritual. So collectively, this is an excellent time. This is for 3 years, okay, a solid 3 years. For the next 3 years to really start to work on our what I would say fundamentally is our mental health and our spiritual health. So starting to take seriously things like our addictions, for example. So we all have, well, let me say it more generally. Maybe it doesn't have to be an addiction, but more fundamentally is take a look at our unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? Now, we all need coping mechanisms. We all need a way to cope with the stresses of life, the challenges of life, and all these things. So it's not about removing coping mechanisms at all, in general. But it is about starting to see where we can remove some unhealthy ones or to restructure our coping mechanisms so that they are much more healthy. Okay, so this can be like, obviously being aware of any addictions we might have and removing those, but just seeing what we do to cope and whether that's a healthy thing or not. It can be anything from food to, a TV to the way we deal with people, relationships, whatever. This will all be in different areas for you. But starting to take that seriously, our mental health and our spiritual health. When it comes to the things that we're building in life, such as our careers or even personal life things that we're building that will take time, to start to build things in our life that are more soul-fulfilling. So again, that comes back to mental health and spiritual health, right? Fundamentally, as we want to build, a life that is, gives us peace, gives us well-being, speaks to our soul, right? Gives us spiritual health. But we could say it's also about following our soul. And yes, we can be very dreamy, very idealistic during this time. We can have strong dreams, ideals about the future, and at the same time, not being very clear where things are headed. Not very clear where things are headed with the systems we're building, with the structures we're building, with the foundations we're building. Maybe also collectively as well, where things are heading with the systems and structures of society. There is a lot of uncertainty around this. So a big part of this is, along with the mental health and spiritual health, is to work on building and trusting our intuition, our inner guidance, again, our connection with our soul, our connection with the internal self, right? This more soul-guided way of living life, okay? So as you can see, that's inherently challenging just by the way you can see the descriptions are, but it becomes extremely constructive. Throughout this process, we're all likely to get a grip on a lot of our coping mechanisms, build more mental health, spiritual health. It's a great time for spiritual activities, creativity, imagination, developing all this. And again, building a life that's more soul aligned and soul fulfilling. Now, with all that being said, we've had a lot of Pisces energy already. And as you can see here in the chart, there is a lot of it. With the outer planets, specifically Chiron, Neptune, the North Node, and of course now Saturn. So the North Node specifically is what I want to address here, because around mid-year, and this is very subtle too, but when we get to about basically late July, the North Node will leave Pisces and go into Aquarius. The nodes move backwards in the chart. And so what this has suggested is that from now, it's been about the past, honestly, like almost 2 years, what will be 2 years, okay? 2 years of having to push more into this world. That it's been like, while there's been a lot of stuff probably in terms of being busy, a lot of work, things that need to be fixed, solving problems. This has been the main theme with the South Node in Virgo. So over these past 2 years, what will be soon 2 years, there's been a lot of karmic energy and foundations collectively around Virgo. Again, problems, fixing, improvement, which has been good for like health, routine, personal development, but it also brings up, because it's karmic, a lot of challenges with this. So while that's been the sort of roots we've been in, work, service, routines, busy, the chart has been pushing us, the life path has been pushing us to develop more Pisces, more acceptance, more peace, more mental health, spiritual health prioritization. So that's still very much in development, and the eclipses are going to help us do this. So we're going to have the eclipses March 14th and March 29th. They're still happening in the Virgo, Pisces signs, and this is going to be the last one that's with the nodes in these signs. And so that's likely, March is likely to be a time where we do, again, make a recalibration to have more health in our life, more healthy day-to-day life, all this kind of stuff that we've been talking about. And then once we do get to about July, we've kind of learned those lessons. So while we will continue to work on that stuff with Saturn, and by this point Saturn will start to go retrograde, so it'll be a little bit easier to work with there anyways. But once, even though we'll still be working on it for the next few years in a way of building and taking it seriously, as we talked about, all this karmic energy, this karmic and having to really push into the Pisces area, and in this case really having to fix all these things and do all that day-to-day stuff with Virgo, that wraps up, that completes. In fact the Virgo stuff will be a little bit sooner than that. That'll be more like as we get into July, the South Node will transition into Leo. Okay, so we finished the Pisces, Virgo, eclipses, North Nodes, South Nodes, those karmic energies around that stuff. So the second half of the year with that shift, the nodes will be in North Node in Aquarius, so it's still good to be visionary, still good to be listening to our excitement. That's really where the push will be. So collectively, there's going to be a lot of Leo energy for the next 2 years. In everything we do, will be rooted in matters of the heart, okay? So interests, hobbies, love, passion, creative self-expression. This is where a lot of karmic energy will be resolving. So while that's the main theme around self-expression, the chart or the life path wants us to move into contribution. How can we focus on being a part of things that are greater than ourselves and access more of our visionary side? So we're likely to see more of that moving forward. Okay, so that's the nodes and Saturn changing sign. Now the other one, like I said, Jupiter every year changes sign. This will be in June. Jupiter will leave Taurus and go into Gemini. So the Taurus energy for this past year has been learning a lot about self-worth, self-value, connecting more with the natural energies of life. So basically learning more about building our resources. And this can translate in terms of building our inner resources like self-worth and self-value, but also external resources like money, material life, and even the natural world and things like this. And mind you, it's still really good to innovate in this world of nature, of the natural world, of self-reliance, with Uranus still transiting through here and what will still be for a good solid total of 10 years, so still 9 years or so of still innovating and experimenting with building resources, okay? But a lot of the expansion, which has mainly been a lot of learning that we've had lately around self-reliance and around cultivating our resources in life, this is starting to wrap up there around June. And this is then Jupiter going into Gemini for 12 months, so we'll start to, explore a lot more in terms of really practical learning and communication. So Gemini, just like Mercury, is all about cultivating our practical minds and also our communications as well. So it can expand things in our life, like a little bit more of connecting with peers, siblings, neighbors, a little more social energy, maybe getting into business and trade can be some things. But all in all, it's all about becoming more curious, more interested, more inquisitive, and really starting to be willing to learn more and communicate more in our lives there. So that's big there. Now Jupiter is going to dip out of Gemini just very briefly here, just for the month of basically October, November here, just going into Cancer. So those couple months, there might be a little bit of a pause with some of that stuff and maybe some things to dive deep about our past or personal life or family life, security kind of stuff. But I'm reading that it's mostly a 2026 development once Jupiter officially enters Cancer. Then lastly, we'll have eclipses in September 7th and September 21st. And like I said, this will be the new eclipses. They technically, the solar eclipse will technically be in Virgo. So there's still going to be this kind of, still resolving this Virgo Pisces stuff to some extent. But because the nodes are in completely new signs, the way I would read this is going to be the first activation of starting to cultivate more of that. Again, visionary stuff, contribution, focusing on the world, the future, innovating, that kind of a thing, and maybe just, making peace with some of the stuff around self-expression. There can be some challenging stuff, like I said, the second half of the year around self-expression or matters of the heart, but to treat that stuff more effortlessly. How can we effortlessly express ourselves and focus more on that contribution and connecting to things greater than herself. So that's how I would read the year. There's obviously more nuances with it. Jupiter will be squaring Chiron October into next year. That can be a good time for learning about healing, personal development, and these kinds of things. But all in all, I think this would be the fundamental here of reading the year. Those being the main areas of activation there. All right, so hope you enjoyed that little yearly reading. Let me know what you guys think. We'll go ahead and wrap up here now. I'll go through the chat and just see if there's any quick questions, final questions I can answer before we close out for today. Fellow traveler, great to have you. So Jen says, I'm a Leo sun too. I often wonder how different time twins can be. I'm a big believer of free will, and I believe even if the charts are practically identical, which is how we see it with twins, a lot of it's how we work with the chart. So life is, I believe, equal parts predetermined and equal parts free will. The predetermined elements is almost like the cards you've been dealt. So we can say two players have the exact same cards being dealt. But how you play those cards is what really determines personality and how your life will unfold and what you'll experience based on the decisions you make. So that's how I see that, if that answers your question. Misbehaving, great for you to join us. Misbehaving says, I have my Chiron return now. The full moon was very intense. Will this week's astrology be chironic with Chiron? Well, Chiron will get more activated once we get into about a little over a month from now, once the fast movers start to pass over Chiron. Right now, Chiron's not being directly activated by the fast movers at least. But once we get to, here, I'll get a little more specific for you. Once we get to the lunar cycle in March, so the eclipses basically. So I would say the eclipses in March I mentioned, but then even after that, so going into April a little bit, as the fast movers will still need to pass over Chiron there. Okay, so that'll be a more Chiron associated time, but of course personal charts are always the most important thing. John D, great for you to join us, thank you. So Delia, hi Athen, good to see you live. Tell me if you're born under a full moon, does that mean each and every full moon has a different effect? Well, if you're born during a full moon, that's going to be your normal energy. That's where you're going to feel most at home. That's where you're going to feel most comfortable. So we just came off of a full moon. So we would say that during full moon times, you're going to feel most alive for you to, be who you are, express yourself, and do what you need to do. And that is how we would classify each of the cycles, right? So each time there's a full moon, it would be, most comfortable for you. That means then the new moons would be more lower. Well, it's particularly for you, lower energy, even though that's kind of what it is, but more of a spiritual time for you. And the squares would be particularly action-oriented time. So it basically would, in a way, it magnifies the lunar cycle, and that makes sense because full moon is a magnifying time of the moon energy. But the easiest way I would say that is paying attention to the full moons of each lunar cycle, as that's likely where you'll notice your energy coming through just generally speaking, the most at ease and the most in flow. Thanks, Randy. Great channel, says Randy. Thanks for you to join us. This music sounds like it's like on a video game or something. Like I'm playing some kind of a tycoon game or something. All right, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. Epify, thanks for joining. Great to see you here. Christine. Glad you all enjoyed the forecast. Thank you. Yep, it's always available to re-listen, Deb. So after we're done here, you'll find it on the YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, type in Mastering the Zodiac, and then go to the live section, you will see this in full uploaded there. All right, everyone. Well, thank you all for joining. Always great to connect with you all. And have a great week. I'll see you all next week for the next live stream and weekly forecast. Take care. Bye-bye.